today's panel. Thank you so much for joining us. We will start the program with our opening remarks from the George Washington University's Provost Christopher Bracey.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our neighbors in the DC area higher education community who are joining us on this special evening. At the George Washington University, we have two main goals: to train future leaders and trailblazers who will solve tomorrow's problems in an increasingly diverse and global society, and second, to push the frontier of knowledge through the creation and production and dissemination of impactful research that will improve the lives of everyday people. In pursuit of these goals, our students' training emphasizes collaborative, cross-disciplinary work that's turning knowledge into action and innovation in research spaces, internships, and jobs alongside peers and mentors. This collaboration function is critical. Even the world's most intelligent leaders cannot solve complex problems in a vacuum. True society-changing innovation grinds to a slow crawl when organizations are concerned only with their own ideas. The climate justice teach-in encourages innovation through collaborative thinking and action. It offers partner institutions the opportunity to share research efforts, ideas to solve climate change and address climate justice. Through this work, we can create stronger climate action networks across our institutions and coordinate equitable action around climate change in our campuses and in our community. We must continue to be innovative and scale up our climate solutions and identify meaningful, fair, and local solutions to the problems that are being discussed. This evening, we will hear from accomplished and motivated DC area students who are helping to lead the conversation about climate solutions. They will provide background on their school's initiatives and encourage dialogue so that we may continue to deepen our sense of common purpose, build resilience, and move quickly towards the shared goals of climate change. I am proud that the George Washington University is part of this very important conversation. As provost, I would be remiss if I did not express gratitude and admiration to our partner institutions for the outstanding education that these students are receiving. I'm deeply appreciative of the continued hard work and commitment from all of the students that you see on the stage this evening. You are all destined to be leaders who will change the world for the better. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy this evening's conversation.
Thank you, Provost Bracey, for those remarks. As a reminder to our panelists, I will introduce you and you will be given 5 minutes to speak. You will be notified at halftime and when there is 1 minute left so you can wrap up your remarks. At the conclusion of our panelists' remarks, we will have questions from the audience. Our first speaker is Maxwell Rubin from American University.
Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Maxwell Rubin. I am a junior at American University, and I am the co-founder of the Energy Democracy Coalition, also known as EDCO. I want to begin by acknowledging the efforts of environmental justice and climate action advocates around the world whose tireless advocacy has lifted climate justice into the minds of people everywhere. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are meeting on Piscataway land and recognize the critical role Indigenous peoples have played and continue to play in stewarding our environment. I would like to thank George Washington University for organizing and hosting this event, and American University for allowing me to represent my campus here today. AU has cultivated a community of change makers, some of whom are presenting back on our campus today. So everybody, are we doomed? This seems to be what the climate movement tells us everywhere we look. Every few months, there's a new IPCC report coming out that's slightly more terrifying than the last, or a devastating new projection for extreme weather, or sea level rise, mass extinction, droughts, migration crises. The list goes on and on. To many of us here today, we know the climate anxiety is absolutely crushing. My field director, Eli, mutters in his sleep about sea level rise, for God's sake. Yet still, most people seem to be blissfully unaware of the magnitude of the climate crisis and unwilling to take serious action. Despite the constant bombardment of news about environmental destruction, our actions still fall short. And that's why I decided to found the Energy Democracy Coalition, or EDCO for short. EDCO first became a thought in the spring of 2021. I was struggling to find a project topic for an energy policy class when Dr. Fiorino of AU School of Public Affairs introduced me to the concept of energy democracy. Shortly after, I met Cody Rogers, a sophomore at American who spends his summer filming for the National Park Service. After hearing the concept of energy democracy and my vision for mobilizing people through hope, Cody was hooked. And just a few months later, EDCO was born. EDCO is built around a simple concept, that fear-mongering by itself is not enough. Now, I'm not diminishing the climate science, I'm just stating the obvious. We're far from saving the world, and I think that's time for a change in approach. We can present the problems while also leading people to the solutions. EDCO is about showing people the positives of transitioning to clean energy and the benefits that it can bring to their lives. People do not exist to just avoid doom. We're more than that. People have goals, dreams, and bills to pay. Yes, we have instincts for self-preservation, but a climate movement which is only built around that one instinct is reductive and cynical. We need to appeal to people's hearts and minds, not just their sense of fear and dread. That's where EDCO comes in. Our mission is to use documentary filmmaking to show ordinary people how transitioning to clean energy can benefit their lives. If your utility company has screwed you over, we want to show you how clean energy is an opportunity to take back power from the utilities. If the rising costs of oil and gas are hurting your wallet, we want to show you how investments in clean energy will save you money. If you're concerned about the corrupting influence of fossil fuel companies on our democracy, we want to show you how shifting to clean energy is a chance to democratize our energy system. To craft a new positive vision for a carbon-free future, EDCO's documentary team is hitting the road. We're going city to city, town to town, and uplifting the diverse voices of America's boldest climate innovators. From environmental justice advocates, to aquarium presidents, to community leaders, to climate innovators, energy experts, and beyond, EDCO is determined to show people that there is more than just doom and gloom. The climate movement is so much bigger than that. Transitioning to clean energy means more than averting a catastrophe. It's an opportunity to make our country better, a more affordable, and a more democratic place. By sharing these visions, we're filling a critical gap in the climate movement. Selling the public on the clean energy transition has to be more than scaring people into submission, because that approach has not worked for 30 years. Yes, we need climate science. Yes, we need to address the disproportionate impacts of climate injustice on low-income communities and people of color. And yes, sometimes we need to scare people. But we also need to show that beyond the science, beyond the fear, there is a better world that has the power to rectify climate injustice if we're willing to fight for it. If we can present a new vision, one of hope and optimism for the future, one that shows people that the clean energy transition can benefit each of us, then we might not be doomed after all. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. Next, we have Holly Thompson from the Catholic University of America.
Thank you. My name is Holly. I'm from Catholic University. I'm a senior. And today I'm going to be sharing my story of how I got really into the environment. As you'll see if I go through this, how I communicate climate change is very, very important to me. And you'll learn why. So I grew up and I live on a lake in New Jersey. And I'm really fortunate because my grandfather lives on the same lake. So I can paddleboard and kayak to his house and do all those cool, fun things. So I grew up being very grateful for the environment. My grandfather, he's in that picture up there. That's us in the Galapagos. He took me on trips. We went snorkeling. And he's also an environmental lawyer and donates his time to environmental organizations in South Jersey. So obviously, when I went to Catholic University, I decided to do what I was passionate about. I decided to study environmental studies, and I picked up a pre-law minor. I got really involved. I started a CUA community garden. I work at the Franciscan Monastery, which is this nonprofit that grows lots of food and has a greenhouse to fight food insecurity in DC. I started a tree campus certification through the Arbor Day Foundation. I run my student government's environmental initiative, and I got some internships with the Catholic Climate Covenant and the Department of Justice and their environmental resources. I did a whole bunch of stuff. Then I went home and I talked to my grandfather about all these things. We talked about religion, politics, and the environment is something we can really agree on. I'm more liberal and he's more conservative, so that was really important to us that we could talk about the environment. So one day I went over to his house and he gives me this article, and it's about the American Conservation Coalition. They're a group of young conservatives started about 4 years ago that promotes free market solutions to environmental issues. And Catholic U being a very conservative campus, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to communicate to our students ways they can get involved and solve the climate issues that are in line with their values. Because it's very hard to try and convince someone to change everything they believe in. So I started a chapter of the ACC at CUA, and that's actually a picture of the community garden I started on their national page on Instagram, which I'm very proud of. So then I decided to take an deeper dive in how to communicate with conservatives based on the conversations I've already had with a lot of them. So for Research Day in 2021, I did research on senators' policy points on their websites and tried to see what was similar about Republicans and Democrats and what we could agree on for the environment. There were 3 things I found. The first was we all can support clean air and clean water. The second, energy independence, and we're really seeing that now with everything that's happening with Russia. And third, strong local economies, and we really saw that with the COVID pandemic, and I think these are super relevant issues. So I use these in order to communicate with conservatives on my campus. Then I wanted to share everything I learned with more people. So naturally, I started the Sustainable Living Office. Basically, any student on CUA's campus can take this and run this office for course credit and start a project that they are very passionate about. So one of us is starting a thrift store on campus, one of us is doing outreach to athletes, one of us is starting sustainability tours, one of us is fighting food insecurity and food waste on our campus. And it only started this semester. And I'm personally doing a networking fair for our big Future of Work conference on Earth Day that I'm very proud of. So doing the Sustainable Living Office, there are 4 things about a sustainable movement that I have come to learn and I'm very proud that our office is doing. 1, we are supporting the initiatives that are already happening. We support the community garden, we support the Franciscan monastery, and a lot of the different programs I have started at CUA. 2, it creates incentives for students to help the planet for course credit, which is really great. It's hard to get people involved in environmental club and have them consistently doing things, so by offering it for course credit, it's really making that better. And then it prepares students for after graduation. So they're learning how to communicate climate change and engage people, and they can continue with that after graduation. And the fourth is communicating in a bipartisan way that has climate optimism, engages a larger amount of people so you can really push your movement forward. And I believe the way I have set up a movement at CUA allows my story to continue after I'm gone. There are a lot of environmental projects and a lot of environmental progress that I haven't got to that the Sustainable Living Office is going to continue after I graduate this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. Next up, we have Laura Rockefeller from Georgetown University.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I feel very grateful to be on stage with other DC activists. My name is Laura Rockefeller. I'm a senior at Georgetown University. And today I'm so excited to tell you a little bit about my work in the Mid-Atlantic region with Citizens Climate Lobby, as well as my experience starting a chapter of CCL at Georgetown. Citizens Climate Lobby is a nonprofit, nonpartisan grassroots advocacy organization. It's focused on building the political will for national policies to address climate change. So our volunteers work all across the country to build relationships with their elected officials, the media, and local businesses. They're empowered to advocate for their local communities, and they mobilize politically around fair and effective climate change solutions. At the federal level, our mission is to pass the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. The EICDA, House Resolution 763, is a carbon tax bill, or sometimes we use the terminology carbon fee and dividend. It would drive down America's carbon emissions while unleashing American technology innovation and ingenuity in clean energy. It's a market solution, bipartisan, that addresses the climate crisis broadly and effectively. At the state level, CCL advocates have played a significant role in getting small towns, cities, and municipalities to endorse this bill, as well as climate policies more generally. Citizens Climate Lobby Georgetown is our institution's chapter of the organization that I am very proud to have helped start. We're one of nearly 55 active chapters worldwide at campuses and also in cities and municipalities. We are working to get Georgetown University professors and administrators to publicly endorse the EICDA. We hold events and panel discussions, write and publish op-eds, spread petitions, and build relationships with administrators at Georgetown. I also work with Citizens Climate Lobby in another capacity. I'm the Mid-Atlantic Regional Fellow, which means technically that I'm my own boss in the Mid-Atlantic region. I direct outreach to faculty and administrators at campuses in the Mid-Atlantic region. I spread the word about CCL internships and opportunities for students. I encourage students to establish CCL chapters at their campuses. I work to increase participation at our conferences and our events, and our lobbying days, which are some of the work that we're most proud of. And I help city and state CCL chapters build connections at Mid-Atlantic campuses. Pictured is a photo of me and some of my colleagues tabling at Georgetown. That was back in 2019 when we began this, when we were a freshman. Now I'm a mentor and I guide our official chapter leaders at campuses in the Mid-Atlantic, like Rutgers, University of Maryland, Penn State, and elsewhere. I meet with them to provide guidance and support and encourage them to pursue their goals at their own campuses. And it's very inspiring work. It's motivating, and it reminds me that so many young people care very much about climate change and are working hard to improve our futures. So thank you so much for being here again. It's wonderful to be able to be part of events like this and connect with other young people doing interesting and important work. If you want to learn more about Citizens Climate Lobby, I've got some flyers on me at this event, and you can also go to the website at citizensclimatelobby.org. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jeremy Leskar from GW.
In June of 2020, GW made what I would argue are the strongest set of climate commitments in the country. The details of those commitments are exciting. Full fossil fuel divestment by 2025, campus carbon neutrality by 2030, reversal of our 200 years of historic emissions as an institution, the creation of a sustainability institute, completely phasing out single-use plastics on campus, and more. The question of how to implement these commitments are important. But perhaps more important than the details of the commitments are the questions of how we got there. Just over a decade ago, a group of students and faculty allies began the movement to push universities to divest their endowments from fossil fuel assets. They were inspired by the success of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa and thought some of their tactics could apply to the climate fight. Their theory of the case was twofold. First, that the fossil fuel industry, just like the South African apartheid state, has relied on a social license to operate. In other words, to maintain its business model of lighting the planet on fire, the fossil fuel industry must retain social legitimacy. A divestment movement could help revoke that social license. Second, tangible campaigns on campuses and in other institutions are a highly effective way to bring people into the climate movement, which we always need more of. Sure enough, within just a couple years of the campaign's launch, hundreds of divestment campaigns popped up around the country and world, including at GW. Campus divestment leaders went on to start and lead some of the most important climate organizations and campaigns of our time, successfully challenging and changing the politics of our country. 1,500 institutions have now divested, representing $40 trillion in assets, in fossil fuel assets. Not only has public opinion moved to more accurately identify the villains in this crisis, but studies are beginning to show that divestment is having a real capital impact on the fossil fuel industry and making it more difficult to continue business as usual. GW's divestment campaign lasted a long 8 years. It took thousands of petition signatures, hundreds of meetings, and dozens of rallies and direct actions. It took making business as usual on campus untenable. The task force that ultimately made GW's historic climate commitments happen was created in response to pressure from the campus divestment movement. None of it would have happened without the leadership and stamina of student movements. As we sit here today, Congress is just a few months away from missing its last legislative window to take action at the scale of the climate crisis in this crucial decade. That's the political reality. When our political leaders fail, it's up to the rest of us. The key question for this next decade is this: how can every institution in our society be leveraged in the fight against climate change and the fossil fuel billionaires that stand in our way? That's the leadership this moment demands. Students are still leading the way on answering this question, and I'm excited for you to hear from my fellow organizer, Aza, on one emerging campaign that aims to do just that.
Next up is Aza Evan Townsend from GW University.
Hi, so yeah, I'll be following up from what Jeremy was talking about. So in November of 2021, Sunrise GW launched our No Fossil Fuel Money campaign. So after successfully divesting GW's endowment from the fossil fuel industry, we're now asking GW to end the fossil fuel industry's influence on our campus for good. Through our campaign, we're demanding our university follow through on all those commitments they made to climate action in the form of an institutional ban on funding from the worst architects of the climate crisis. The fossil fuel industry and its allies have a history of deliberately misleading the public narrative around climate science and solutions to climate change. Fossil fuel companies are known to fund academic centers in an attempt to influence their research and further prevent important climate policy. This directly undermines our research academic freedom, and it also contributes greatly to the fossil fuel industry's social license to operate and furthers intense greenwashing campaigns that this industry is known to participate in. Our No Fossil Fuel Money petition asks that anyone in the GW community can sign, has over 12,000 signatures. Our faculty pledge has received over 50 signees, and a letter demanding an end to the fossil fuel industry's funding of the climate research that was released by our counterparts at Harvard was signed with over 500 academics across the globe and continues to increase in signatures. We know this is the next step universities must take to rid our campuses of the fossil fuel industry's influence. The urgency of the climate crisis cannot be stressed enough. Communities of color, indigenous populations, and people with lower incomes are on the front lines of the destruction that the fossil fuel industry continues to create, and institutions like ours have a responsibility to take serious action. Through this campaign, we're hoping to offer a path for GW to become a bold climate leader and pave the way for other universities to do the same. Now is the time to stand against the fossil fuel industry and protect the academic freedoms and credibility of our institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Azza. Next up, we have Isa Deering from Howard University.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am so grateful to be here in this room and just having this conversation that's so necessary. My name is Isa Deering. I'm a senior history and environmental sciences major, geography minor from Durham, North Carolina. I'm also a Marshall Scholar to the University of Oxford, the 4th person ever selected from Howard University to do so. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Howard University Student Association and the President of the Climate Change Club. But I never really saw myself as an environmentalist growing up. I'm sure many of you in this room and many of my peers back at Howard kind of feel the same. When I learned about climate and environmental change, my high school taught me about sea level rise and the extinction of the polar bears. And while these issues are incredibly important, I didn't really see how these could apply to my everyday lived experiences in Durham, North Carolina. See, in my neighborhood, we thought that environmental issues were distinctly separate from racial equity issues. So we began organizing around racial equity. We talked about how we lived closer to landfills than decent grocery stores. We talked about how we could only afford to go to the farmer's market if we qualified for food stamps. We organized around how the bus routes through my hometown and even Washington, D.C., trying to get here today was a struggle. If you know, you know. We shared about how our parents, and I'm not sure if anyone in this room relates, didn't allow us to touch the thermostats because they were afraid that the utility bill would get too high, even in extreme hot or cold weather. These conversations are often at the back burner of environmentalism. But these conversations are what make up the brunt of environmental justice. And this is where Howard University's Department of Earth, Equity, and Environment comes in. Students like me, we often feel excluded from the conversation on environmentalism because environmental justice is often categorized as this separate form of environmentalism. It's not the principles that should be integrated into every single conversation that we have. Howard's environmental program is unique. It's interdisciplinary by nature. It centers racial, gender, and economic justice in our coursework on environmentalism and sustainability. Some of our core coursework is looking at environmental inequalities that afflict the Shaw-Howard community and the DC Wards 7 and 8, which are most disproportionately impacted by environmental injustices. We take classes that teach us how capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism, that is the responsibility of Western nations for the disproportionate impact of climate change in the global South. And we pay particular attention to the historical nature of environmental issues in the United States, looking specifically at the genocide of Native Americans, of transatlantic slavery, of redlining, of Jim Crow era laws, and so much more. And the Department of Sustainability is doing the work to advance environmental justice conversations across schools and colleges. We're trying to expand outside of just the environmental science program. We want to relate to everyone. My leadership in advancing these conversations has been across campus as well. We do this through campus outreach initiatives, environmental education, volunteer opportunities, and most recently, the establishment of our Student Green Fund. We've been advancing these conversations across campus. We've hosted panels on environmental justice, bringing in local Black and Brown DC organizers and paying them for their work. We've been looking at what it's like to be a person of color in the clean energy and renewable energy space. We've got our students involved in cleaning up the Anacostia Rivershed and understanding how water quality and air quality impact our health as human beings. We've dedicated funds specifically to sustaining a food pantry that attacks food inequality and access on campus. We've ensured that Howard's Community Garden not only serves Howard University students, but folks in the Shaw-Howard area. And we've started composting initiatives on campus. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It wasn't until I got to Howard that I saw these principles of environmental justice integrated into activism and academia. So I hope that you consider these principles in your future work as well, and I hope we kind of center them in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa. Next up, we have Anissa Young from Trinity Washington University, and she's joining us virtually today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anessa Young, junior at Trinity Washington University, double majoring in business administration and psychology. And I just want to express how happy I am to be able to present via Zoom today, and not only to represent my university, but also my passions. So I just want to thank George Washington for having me here today. Ever since the fall of 2021, when I met Dr. Watts, I fell in love with sustainable development, and I have not looked back. As a Catholic minority serving institution, Trinity has long had a devotion to social justice. The introduction of the environmental justice minor is now part of that mission, as it is needed now more than ever. Students need to know and understand the history of environmental injustices leading up to its current state, and the importance of promoting sustainable development. The special sauce of this program is that it was designed by a real interdisciplinary system at Trinity, professors in business, sciences, history, and literature. Additionally, and I quote, through community service projects that our students undertake through campus ministry, including volunteering at the farm at the Franciscan Monastery, Sister Anne made a connection to Casey Trees, a remarkable organization committed to restoring the tree canopy in DC. In early December, Casey Trees planted 100 trees around campus, augmenting the beauty and environmental sustainability of our campus. From Dr. Watts, I learned that individual responsibility is just as important as that of institutions and businesses. Our planet remains on life support, and it is more than a necessity to preserve the beauty that is left through our daily actions. So myself, along with two of my friends, Karen and Jamilith, with different majors and areas of concentration that are just as passionate, decided to create the Sustainable Initiatives Club. This club is committed to improving the local environment by educating and encouraging Trinity sisters to instill sustainable practices in their daily lives. Our goal is to optimize the well-being of our community by engaging with our Trinity neighbors, working with local leaders, and partnering with organizations and other universities. We believe that through better environmental practices, the Sustainability Club will have a positive impact on current and future students, staff, families, communities, and ultimately the world. It is of the utmost importance that the change starts with us, within our communities, to prevent the extension of environmental injustices. 30 years ago, we were warned by former NASA Director James Hansen, and we have observed and witnessed the climatic changes around the world. Therefore, our planet should be a priority to us, just like we were to it for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Matthew Thompson from Gallaudet University.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Thompson, and I'm a junior majoring in biology. I'm from Gallaudet University. I want to thank George Washington University for the invitation. I'm excited to share with you this information. I will be covering two major areas. First, I'll discuss capstone projects by students focusing on sustainability, including water quality of water fountains on campus, and a proposal to build a green roof on one of the campus buildings. And secondly, what our student organizations, Galley Gardens and Green Gallaudet, are doing. So in terms of water quality of water fountains, 2 students, Liba Krigsman and Claire Slaughter, led this effort. They worked on the water quality of fountains all around campus. People were complaining about the drinking water. There were fewer filters, and they were buying more plastic water bottles. And also, there were some internal issues as well. So these 2 students decided to thoroughly investigate water quality on campus by collecting samples through the campus totaling 29 water fountains. These samples were analyzed for E. coli and various nutrients and metals, including ammonium, calcium chloride, copper, chlorine, zinc, and so forth. Once that was done, the levels of most nutrients and metals discovered in the water samples were tested to be at non-toxic levels by WHO standards. Some of the water fountains we found did have a high ammonium level, which led to some concerns in addition to bitter or altered taste of the water. Those students wanted to give a proposal to Gallaudet to change all of the older water fountains into newer ones and provide at least 1 new fountain for each building within the next several years for everyone's health and safety in terms of drinking water. Next is the Green Roof Project, and that was done by 5 students, Fatima Abdul Rahim, Joseph Mendez, Kyle Myris, Abraham Polenko, and William Valancourt. They had seen an increasing global temperature and increasing rain that caused accelerated damage to roofs on the buildings at Gallaudet's campus. And so they wanted to give a proposal to Gallaudet for a green roof. The hope was to make an impact on the damage that had been done to these roofs. And they wanted, and the damage caused by climate change, and they discovered and researched various green roofs, what plants would be compatible. And they made 3D models of green roofs for the Hall Memorial Building, or HMB, on campus on the top floor, that 4th floor, and proposed a design for a green roof. They also proposed a plan, including a budget for setting up the green roof. And that proposed green roof will help with reducing stormwater and cooling of the building. Next, 2 student-led organizations, Galley Gardens and Green Gallaudet. So these 2 student organizations helped to plant 3,000 strawberries close to Ballard West at Gallaudet. They also grew squash, lemon basil, and other foods. They maintain and clean the gardens. And also they collaborated with Casey Trees and planted trees on campus before the pandemic. So we're hoping to continue with more sustainability projects in the future, such as microgrid and installation of solar panels. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Janelle Dunn from the University of District of Columbia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle Dunn. I would first like to say thank you so much to George Washington for sincerely the program, this event. I am very, very thankful to be here. Dr. Zenadil, Cameron Zenadil from UDC is the reason why I am here. He felt that my passion for this particular topic should, I guess, be publicized, if you will. Environmental injustice and climate gentrification are very, very, very serious topics for me. Very, very serious, because when we speak about green infrastructure, building resiliency, just everything that comes with equity, we live in a time where inclusion seems to be left behind sometimes, and we kind of, forget that everybody is a part of that. Climate change is inevitably going to happen. But when we start to do certain changes within our neighborhood and urbanize certain areas of our neighborhood, we cannot forget those that lack those resources and lack that financial stability, if you will, to also help themselves. Even if no one wants to be a part of that, we still have to make sure that people have the resources to help themselves, because again, that's what humanity is supposed to do. So with that being said, again, my name is Janelle Dunn. I am a senior attending the University of District of Columbia, and I'm majoring in urban sustainability. Environmental injustice and climate gentrification are both global, national, and local issues affecting many low-income communities, families, and individuals. They both pose multiple hazardous health risks and threaten many livelihoods due to lack of resources such as employment, income, food security, and transportation. Lack of equity is an environmental hazard, and it threatens public safety and health. The high percentages of COVID-19 cases reported and those resulting in death, in combination with unemployment, lack of income, food insecurity, and inaccessibility, may all be externalities caused by environmental injustice. A case study conducted in Northwest and Southeast Washington, D.C., known as the extent of disparity, shows data concluding that the risk of a chronic or cancer-related illness was 5 times higher in Southeast wards, and emergency asthma-related visits were 30 times higher than in Northwest wards. I have this slide, the theory of biophilia, up because the theory of biophilia is defined as an idea which suggests that humans are innately drawn to require a connection with nature to live healthy, fulfilling lives. Connect people back to nature because humans are naturally drawn to humanity. A biophilic city is not only environmentally sustainable, but it allows green spaces to be inclusive. All humans have a right to clean air, land, and water. My idea is initially to present the idea of a biophilic city to wards 7 and 8, specifically Southeast. I think that this is a really, really good idea for Northeast and Southeast, specifically Southeast, because inclusion is everything. Equity is everything. Giving people resources that they need to survive is everything. Anything that lacks anything short of that is an environmental hazard. It is a danger to public health and safety if people cannot feed themselves, if they aren't employed to feed themselves or their families. The mental situation behind it, the emotional distress behind it. People are already struggling from low income or other food insecurity, whatever the other lack of resources, whatever, all of the above. So to add environmental injustice on top of that, I can't even go outside to enjoy air, clean air, or my kids, future kids, for that matter. 30 times high is a very serious rate when we talk about asthmatic, and 5 times for cancer or another chronic illness is also a very serious thing that we need to talk about. And income, Northwest wards make a lot more than Southeast wards. So with that being said, Someone in Northwest or Southwest can ultimately afford to purchase quote unquote peace of mind. But someone in Northeast or especially Southeast, what would be peace of mind? You know, they could barely afford to feed themselves, let alone to afford to buy to go, you know, and have stress relievers. So to be able to walk outside and be in a green environment can definitely, you know, mentally and emotionally save a person, you know, let alone to boost their physical immunity. So it definitely matters. In conclusion, again, environmental injustice and climate gentrification are both global issues affecting low-income communities. Air pollution is a major environmental hazard. I propose Southeast Washington, D.C. should be the first project's implementation top priority if we propose the idea of a biophilic city. I would also like to propose to partner with and to collaborate with Sustainable DC 2.0 as they share a like agenda, and I would gladly will want to partner and see ways that we can help Southeast and Northeast have a biophilic atmosphere and not be left behind when we talk about climate change and environmental injustice. It is not fair that human beings are left with the butt of that, if you will, quote unquote, you know, and they're humans, they're real lives. So it's not fair that we just disregard them like, hey, it's my time here. What about everyone else? So thank you for your time and for the invitation, and everyone stay safe. And thank you to all the other presenters as well. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their thoughts. And next, we'll open it up to the audience for any other questions. Well, we can start with the first question. How can our universities come together to create a network of equitable change from both on campuses and in the DC area?
One of the really cool things I noticed is that someone who was on the Zoom call, I forget who it is, was talking about the Franciscan monastery. And that's another organization that I also volunteer at and a group at CUA goes to. And I think that proves like we all really care about food insecurity and how that's related to environmental justice in the DC area. And I think we could like create a coalition of community gardens and things like that in the DC area that like all contribute to fighting food insecurity, but also fighting climate change at the same time. So that's what environmental justice is. It's like fighting those issues at the same time. So I thought it was really cool.
Does anyone on Zoom want to answer that question?
Are we still speaking about the first question of collaboration?
All right, then we can move on to our
Yes.
next question. What marginalized groups does your organization work with to raise their voices to be heard on climate change?
I can start. Obviously Howard University is a historically Black college. So that just simply means that during the historical inequalities of this nation, it has always been open to Black students as an institution of higher learning. So our Howard University and organizations within Howard University as a whole have been working to specifically support low-income communities in Washington, D.C., people of color, specifically Indigenous people as well, and specifically women and non-binary folks. So those are the target populations, justice involved people as well. So just ensuring like how can we uplift these communities in a way that is community centered. I know Howard University has had a complicated history with the Washington, D.C. community. And I'm not sure if y'all also want to speak to this, but Howard has sometimes been exclusionary. We've been told that we are an elite institution and that we should shun the locals. And our organizations specifically in the sustainability realm have been discouraged by this history and want to remedy it by specifically targeting these target populations and ensuring that we're not trying to impose a community garden where it's not needed. We want to support where we can. If you need a sidewalk on Georgia Avenue and 14th, we're going to come and show up for you. We're going to give our public comment to help you get that sidewalk. So I think in a very community-centered way, that's how Howard University and specifically organizations at Howard University have been helping to support marginalized communities.
Yeah, this is obviously a critical question. I wouldn't use the word marginalized necessarily, just because of the connotations with that term. But Citizens Climate Lobby is very intentional about its work with conservatives, young conservatives in particular. Climate action is going nowhere if we are not able to make climate change an issue that moves beyond the division that the United States is experiencing right now. I'm proud to say that I was recently, getting to know some of the activists that are working on a conservative action conference that either just happened or is happening very soon in DC that brings conservatives together to talk about climate action and to make that something that's able to be part of the conservative platform. I mean, that's a real goal that all environmentalists should take very seriously, in my view. But yeah, it's the broader idea is we're talking about the planet, so we're talking about everybody here.
So I'm going to speak about a story from the documentary series that I'm working on with the Energy Democracy Coalition. We had the opportunity back in the fall to speak to the Director of Energy Equity and Inclusion at Solar United Neighbors. And Solar United Neighbors started out of a group of individuals who went around knocking on doors in DC to try to raise awareness to pitch in and build solar on people's roofs. Simple concept. And it grew to delivering, solar ownership and the benefits of solar to individuals in DC, low-income individuals, and it's grown to countrywide now. And it's really something to stress is how can we build relationships with the community and build trust, especially when, in the past, there's been lots of programs in which solar has been offered to individuals where it's a discount, they're told, or when they're supposed to save money. And then in the end, they end up paying more for their electricity bills and they're not getting the full benefits, or the utilities are getting their renewable energy credits and they're not able to generate revenue from that. So it's really important to make sure that, we're not just making, justice one of the prongs of our approach, but we're looking at how we can approach policy through the lens of environmental justice. It shouldn't just be, one thing that we're focused on. It should be the thing that we're looking at everything else on. So just wanted to share that story.
Anyone on Zoom want to comment?
Yes. So Trinity is a minority institution, specifically mostly Black and Hispanic students attend, and we are a women's college. So over the years, the environmental justice definition has broadened, and it comes under social justice also has an impact. So when we look at environmental issues, it's not just factors that affect the environment, but also the social injustices that affect the environment. The club that we are starting at Trinity, it's to get students more engaged, get minority students more engaged, because we hardly see minority students being included in environmental justices just because of where they attend schools or the resources that are available to them. So they do not know, and they do not know how to implement this within their daily lives. So that is what the club is strictly focused on. And I feel like that is what we need to, like working together from different institutions. I feel like that is what we need within the DC area to help different students, not just the ones from DC, but also the ones that have different backgrounds from different countries, to help them to understand that environmental justice, it has a broader scope.
All right, awesome. And Matthew, I believe you also had some comments?
Yes, this is Matthew. Yes, so as everyone has commented, and you saw in my PowerPoint presentation, I just wanted to plant this seed about projects, including deaf individuals. And, Gallaudet University, there are a lot of deaf people there who really want to move forward and work on various projects. And we want to be part of this movement and collaborate with various organizations. And so I like seeing students collaborate and have different organizations all across the city. We, for example, have so many at Gallaudet, and we look forward to collaborating.
All right, awesome. And I'll once again open it up for any questions for the audience. Yes, there's a microphone right there if you want to use it. So the way we look at greenwashing, at least at Howard University and through our organizations, is that we kind of seek to tell the true story of our environmental and social reality.
Improving.
Right? Oh, did you hear the echo? Everyone can hear me okay? Okay, cool. So essentially what we try to do through like our education, like our environmental education initiatives, is we kind of tell the story of environmentalism through a historic and racially centered lens. So we're recognizing that it's not just, as one of my panelists said earlier today, like it's not just about having a plastic water bottle and recycling that bottle. And it's not just about ensuring that you have your tote when you go to the grocery store. Like we understand that these are systemic issues that require systemic change. So that's kind of how we've been combating it through an educational and more outreach lens. If anyone else cares to comment on that.
Yeah, so kind of expanding upon that, so I would say from the standpoint of what should we do on campus to get people involved, that's really where you look at the recycling efforts and the different efforts around campus through zero waste on our school, how we can really organize people to do different energy conservation programs. We have a few programs to kind of educate individuals where we have peers going around talking to individuals, but that's to get people in the door, to kind of gauge the interest of our community. And then from there, I think it's a very important step to then translate from, we get people involved and interested, and then now we really ensure that people are being educated in the classrooms on the full effects of our inaction, on the full effects of the systemic changes that are needed. And so it's, a two-pronged approach to prevent, people from being misled and thinking that that the individual actions are just, the only thing that needs to be occurring, which a lot of people often are led down that path of like, individual actions are going to solve this. Well, that's not the case. But, I've noticed that there is a growing trend on campuses, most especially at AU, to, give that two-pronged approach and to prevent people from kind of going that path of, and from to, ensure that people are educated and understand, what it really takes to solve this climate crisis.
Catholic University kind of has the opposite problem. So students think the university is greenwashing, but we're actually not. So we have a problem where like students think we don't recycle, and our job is more to tell them that we do, and we do compost, and we do all these things. And like, yeah, so that's our problem.
I think we're seeing these days an enormous pressure on institutions to like pay lip service to concepts of sustainability and to kind of uh, jump on the bandwagon on that one. So I think as much as we want to see administrative action, it's on students. It's on students to be alert and to hold their administrations accountable. At Georgetown, I know that there's been incredible student effort on creating an environmental studies major, not just a minor, and incorporating environmental science, environmental justice, every component of sustainability and environmental action into that major, and pressured the administration to make good on its promises to divest. Yeah, it's on the students, but it's exciting to see action coming from anybody.
All right, thank you so much to our panelists and to anyone who asked a question. Please join us for light refreshments in the art gallery, just one floor above us. Thank you, everyone.